Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kieran Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
Is seat taken?
Hey, Kieran.
Ryan,
you ever had deja vu?
No.
I don't know. Let me check with the kitchen.
What's that?
I don't know. That's a joke from Groundhog Day.
I don't. Oh, okay. Well, there's a lot. I mean, half the script is deja vu.
That's
Groundhog
a joke,
Day.
yeah.
So I think maybe today we're starting with an apology. Is that how we're kicking off?
You want to apologize to me for something?
I think you know what I'm referring to, Ryan, which is the reason you have a feeling of deja vu is because we have talked about everything we're about to talk about before. Now, why is it that we would be re-recording? Is it technically re-recording?
No, we're not re-recording.
If your co-host didn't press the record button?
Well, Kieran, I require us to have a really intense dress rehearsal before we record, and that's all that was. So we're coming to this is just as fresh as we usually are. None of these topics feel like I've said them all before.
It was definitely a stellar dress rehearsal that now lost time. And by the way, folks, not just one episode, 2 episodes. 2 episodes lost to time. And I still haven't heard you say, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry that I booked such an amazing guest for us today, Tommy Wallach, who I did remember to record. So,
So who's Tommy Wallach?
Tommy Wallach is the co-owner of a massively popular escape room in Los Angeles, Hatch Escapes, and their most famous room is called Lab Rat. And we're going to talk to him today about the business of escape rooms. Why should we care about escape rooms? Where do they come from? And just, how to pick a good one to go have fun with your friends.
I think this is interesting because I feel like escape room is one of those things where I just kind of assumed that like every sort of like attraction that could be built was already figured out.
Right.
Like a haunted house, or like, I don't know, a hayride.
You're like the guy who wanted to like close down the U.S. Patent Office in like 1901.
Yeah, like
everything
we've done
was
it
an
all.
event. Yeah.
I mean, for what it's worth, America was doing pretty well in 1901. Look at us today. Maybe if the patent office had been closed, we'd still be doing just fine.
Yep.
But escape rooms are a genuinely new kind of thing. And one thing that Tommy does is that he actually kind of like writes the narrative, right?
Yeah. He's a novelist, and one of my favorite novels of his is called We All Looked Up. But he definitely approaches escape rooms in a way that is different. He'll talk about that today in the interview. That is different than a lot of folks, because he does think heavily about how do I tell a real story here, have a narrative.
All right, Ryan. But before we get to that interview, we do have a couple listener. One was a listener comment. One was a listener question that I think we have to tackle here. So first, I want to thank the listener that I think slid into the DMs. Perhaps I don't think it was in the old email box out of office.
No. This is definitely a DM slider.
Yeah, I think this was a DM slip. And the person said, Kieran forgot to post to the Instagram the Peruvian erotic poetry from Museo Larco that he had promised in Lima. And you know what? My bad. Thank you for calling it out. I'm glad you were listening so attentively. So if folks head over to the Instagram at OOO Podcast, you will be able to see some very graphic Peruvian pottery.
And folks, if you are sensitive, if you have sensitive eyes, or you don't like to see really shocking pottery, avoid this Instagram post, because it is wild.
I mean, you're joking, but tell me the truth. It's a little more graphic than you were expecting, right?
It's more graphic than pottery needs to be. Like
yeah, but when you're living in an age with no smut magazines and no TV, so you gotta get your kick somewhere. You might as well be in your pottery.
That's true. Some people, really love their pottery.
And I think I will actually throw even a couple extra up beyond what I've got up there. So go wet your palate with what we already have. And maybe when we head back into the Machu Picchu episode, I'll trickle a few more in.
Yeah, check it out at OOO Podcast. It is blowing up, folks. Just go there. You can get a good taste of everything we talk about here.
Now, the next thing we got is a listener question. Went to the email box. This is outofofficepod@gmail. A little different than the Instagram handle. That's some good branding. And it came from a listener named Richard. And Richard asked, what are the most interesting regional fast food chains in the U.S. that I've never heard of?
That he's never heard of. Well, we don't know what Richard's heard of and what he hasn't heard of. I mean, we can try.
That's true. We can try. I gotta say though, Ryan, as we started to sort of banter about this, and we've actually done 20 minutes on this before.
Yeah.
We realized there's so much meat here, not meaning
Yeah.
just the meat that you can eat. There's so much meat to this idea of great regional fast food chains that we're going to have to answer this kind of in short here, but we think this deserves its own episode.
Yeah, I think that this is something we want to really dive into. So this is just going to be a little taste of some regional fast food.
So what I would suggest, Ryan, is that maybe each of us can give a regional fast food chain from like where we grew up.
Okay.
And then we can each say one that we've tried when we were traveling somewhere else in the U.S.
So we're going to do 2 total.
Well, each of us is going to do
each
2
of us is
for
gonna do
a
2.
total of 4.
I understand.
You
Okay.
didn't seem to understand.
No. Well, I'm excited about this.
Me too. So you want to go first?
I do want to go first. I grew up in Salisbury, Ocean City, Maryland, in the eastern shore of Maryland, and we have a phenomenal boardwalk. I say this as someone who doesn't like boardwalks, but this is, as boardwalks go, this is a good one.
Sure.
And there is a chain of French fry places called Thrasher's French Fries. And really all they serve are French fries. And, it's the kind
That's
of...
it?
That's pretty much all they serve, French fries. I think you might be able to get a drink there too, but French fries. And it's the kind of French fries that they pour salt and vinegar on it. And they are just the most delicious things. And my dad used to tell me when I was a kid, the reason they taste so salty is because all the men are sweating in them as they're making it. And I don't know that that's true, but if you watch, they're certainly sweating and they're certainly standing over the hot grease that will eventually have your French fries in it. So I think there's some kind of truth to that. But either way, nothing beats a nice, crispy, hot Thrasher's French fries covered in salt and vinegar and probably some man's sweat. So that is my place to try. There are 3 locations in Ocean City, Maryland, and it's one of the things I make sure to get back whenever I'm in town.
I mean, 3 locations, I would say, is pretty much the lower edge of what answers this.
It's
question.
Regional and it's fast food.
It is regional and it's fast food, and it is a chain to the point that it's like if you have 3 rungs together, that is a chain.
Yeah, I mean, we could open a 4th one if you'd like. I mean, it'd be a huge hit if you open it in Bushwick.
Well, we are very sweaty.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, that goes pretty well.
Speak for yourself.
You reminded me, my mom likes to tell a story of when she was little, there used to be this like burger stand that she used to go, and it had one of those like men that wore paper hats, it was like all very classic 1950s. And she has forever loved grilled onions on her burger. And she would ask for extra grilled onions. And the man behind the counter would go, "I guess you don't have a date tonight."
Oh my God, that's so rude.
Now, but she was a little girl. In the Me Too era, could you make that joke?
Oh my, I mean, you'd be arrested.
I do think you would be.
Yeah, no, I think you could definitely not make that joke.
Well, Ryan, your story of just kind of the 3-chain French fry place reminds me of a place that I grew up going. I grew up right outside New Haven. And Pepe's New Haven Pizzeria is
Pepe's New Haven Pizzeria.
Exactly. New Haven's a great pizza town. I definitely someday want to do an episode just about kind of the history of pizza place in New Haven because it's a fierce rivalries, great loyalties, very dramatic, kind of like Philly cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Everyone has their favorite place and reason why. But Pepe's is kind of the most famous one. It started in 1925 in New Haven. And it's super famous, especially for its clam pizza, sort of picking up on the fact that it's right on the shore.
I'm sorry, clam what?
Clam pizza.
Is that a thing?
It is a thing. But I'll tell you, I actually have a place just outside of New Haven that I think is an even better clam pizza. But it doesn't qualify as a chain, that one. So we're going to talk about Pepe's.
Okay, sorry. We're talking about Pepe's.
Just like it probably maintains some of the charm that Thrasher's still only has 3 outposts. But Pepe's, I have seen over the last decade, stretch out itself into 11. And
11?
So, it now has outposts all across the Nutmeg State in Connecticut. It has 2 in Massachusetts. It's at 1 in Yonkers, New York, and 1 in Warwick, Rhode Island.
So I could go check out a Pepe's.
Oh yeah, you could absolutely go check out a Pepe's if you wanted to go to Yonkers.
I mean, why not?
Yeah, well, you might as well go to the original one, which is what I would suggest, because I do think the kind of outposts, the further out you go, the more you're kind of watering down the quality. But that first one, there's still a long line in New Haven. Why is that funny?
That's called the rule of Pepe. The further from the original Pepe's you get, they can no longer just make that same.
By the time you get 50 miles out, it's just a tomato smashed against a piece of bread.
They really need a manager there at Pepe's.
Yeah. And so I still recommend, I think there's a great charm to still going to the one in New Haven. You get that clam pizza, but you can't actually find it all over the place. So if you're desperate for just a taste of that tomato pie, it's that signature New Haven style. You got it. It's a little crispy, tiny bit burnt on the bottom, thin crust, really solid, and a highly addictive tomato sauce.
You are making me so hungry right now. You have no idea.
It's funny because you want the pizza. I desperately want those French fries just covered in men's sweat.
Not just men. Anybody can work at Thrasher's.
Oh, I thought you said the men.
I think my dad might have said that. He winked at me. He knew it. He knew even at 8.
It was a different time. He knew at 8 that you would find them even more delicious.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I know what you're like. Yeah.
Oh, brother.
My poor dad.
All right, Ryan. Now let's each say one that we've tried when we've actually been traveling somewhere in the U.S.
Well, I want to talk about a fantastic Jamaican fast food restaurant, regional fast food restaurant here in New York called Golden Crust. And anybody who's lived in New York has walked by a Golden Crust.
I have walked by a ton.
Yeah, there's
but never eaten there.
Oh, well, you're missing out. It was started in 1989 by a family of Jamaican immigrants, and now they have over 100 locations all around the East Coast.
Wow.
And the reason I know this place so well is for a brief time in the early aughts, I was a personal assistant to this man who was from Jamaica. He was also a Jamaican immigrant. And
just like you.
we got along. We had a lot in common. And one of the things that he would enjoy eating for lunch are the jerk chicken patties at Golden Crust. So he would just give me like a 20 and I'd go buy 10 of those things. And we just sit up there and, while I'm like sorting his receipts or whatever it is a personal assistant does, we would eat these amazing jerk chicken patties. So love Golden Crust. I actually should go there more often. And there's not any in Bushhook really. But it is delicious. And if you're in New York, you've never had a Jamaican patty, grab one.
I mean, what's amazing is I've walked by that place hundreds of times living in New York City. I didn't even know that it was Caribbean fast food. That's so fascinating. I will definitely make time to get there.
You'll be surprised. It's a lovely place.
So we've gone from 3 outposts to 11 outposts to 100 outposts. Now this one's super fascinating. It's a place called Nando's, Nando''. And ironically, it's big internationally. Like there's over 1,000 locations in total. But in the U.S., it is highly regional. There's only 42 locations in the U.S., and they're in Maryland, D.C., Illinois, and Virginia. And it's a South African chain, and it specializes in piri-piri chicken. So if you really like that like a very, very spicy chicken, a really flavorful sauce, this is absolutely the place for you. I used to travel for work down to D.C. quite often. I would always make time to go to Nando's, which is right in the Chinatown area in D.C., even though this is, as I said, started in Johannesburg in 1987, and it has no part in the Chinese heritage of the area.
Yeah, and I've also eaten at that exact same Nando's, and usually fast food can be a little bland.
That is not the
a
case
problem
here,
here at
no.
Nando's. Yeah.
And they have just a variety of amazing sauces. So it can be adjusted based on your heat tolerance. But if you really love spicy, you can get that kick here.
Yeah, so I join you in recommending Nando's, and I know we have some listeners in DC, they should go check it out.
What I would love to ask is for those listeners who are from the United States, why don't you write in and tell us your favorite regional chain, and then we will do an episode where we share those back out onto the pod. So send those emails to outofofficepod@gmail.com.
And you can also send us a message right from our website, outofofficepod.com. Click on Contact Us. Boom, shoot us an email there.
See, now that I noticed there's some consistency there. outofofficepod.com, outofofficepod@gmail. That's very good.
Right. We tried.
It's just that Instagram just kind of escaped us.
We did the best we could.
So send us your favorite regional fast food chains, and we can help Richard get the answer.
Thank you for that excellent question, Richard. And you know what? I think it's time to escape this conversation and take off to chat with Tommy Wallach.
Oh, that was pain. But yeah, let's get to your interview with Tommy Wallach, all about escape rooms.
Flight attendants?
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
So, Tommy Wallach, thank you so much for joining us here on Out of Office.
Thanks for having me.
On this podcast, we've covered a lot of different topics. And I've always brought up how I love interactive experiences. And so obviously I love escape rooms. And you and I have done some escape rooms together.
We have indeed.
Can you give us a little background on, what escape rooms are and how they came to be a part of modern life?
Yeah, sure. So they actually came out of the digital space, which is, I think, relatively unprecedented that things have moved in that direction.
It's all like mist. It's like, mist happened and then escape rooms.
Yeah. And I mean, more directly, Mist led to actual digital escape rooms specifically. Like they were called that. They
Really?
were called like The Room or something. Yeah, those came out of Japan. And you're just basically in a locked room in a Mist-like environment, and you have to get out. There's, sometimes narrative, but usually not very much or not very good narrative. But they were these little games, kind of like flash games. They're very, very small, easy for people to make, and they kind of took off.
I had not heard that. So, like, where were the first countries to have the physical games? Was it also Japan?
It seems to have moved to Eastern Europe.
Really?
Yeah, Eastern Europe has been the vanguard of this movement, and even to this day, I don't think there's any city that has more escape rooms than Moscow. Though you'd have to look at the data, but there's one company alone has something like 250 rooms in Moscow. So it's pretty big, and a lot of the rooms that are here in the States, people don't know this immediately, but a lot of the rooms that came here first are actually Russian companies that construct the rooms in Russia and then ship them here in some form where they are rebuilt, sort of copies of rooms they have already over there.
So, is it possible that escape rooms are really just some massive Russian intelligence operation to determine the intelligence of the American public?
That is a regular joke within our community. Also, there's some pretty easy humor to be had around the idea of why it's so important in the Russian psyche, the concept of escape. But these are all just jokes. But what you will notice if you ever play a room and you discover that the English is really problematic somewhere, then you're playing a Russian room that hasn't been super well translated.
or I'm in a foreign country. Like when I go to Mexico City and do rooms, there's some pretty bad English in those.
Oh yes, I guess they need to do English because they're targeting tourists, huh?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So not only have you played a lot of escape rooms, you have an escape room. Tell us a bit about Hatch.
So we opened our first and only room, about getting on a year and a half ago here in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is far and away the most developed city in the country in terms of the sheer number of escape rooms and variety of escape rooms. Some of our best escape rooms in the country are not here in LA, but still there are hundreds of escape rooms here, probably because of the proximity to the industry, to Hollywood.
Yeah, and one can make the same comment about the escape in the LA psyche as they could about escape in the Russian psyche.
Fair enough. Well played, sir. But yeah, we opened, my co-founder and I, Terry, we met many, many years ago when I was 17 at a program for writing musical theater. And we've been sort of close since then, on and off. But when I was out here visiting, I live here now, but I was out here visiting about 3.5 years ago. And we played our first escape room together because I'd heard about them, and LA had a lot of them. And he and I are lifelong gamers, lifelong puzzlers, and lifelong connoisseurs of narrative. And we came out of that first room, which was a totally fine room. But we came out of it thinking, oh my God, this is a new medium for storytelling, and the people doing it haven't quite realized that yet. And that was an incredibly exciting thing. It was like being at the dawn of film or something, where it's like, the first films were like a train coming at the camera and people freaked out.
Right.
And it took a while for them to realize, like, oh, this is great for telling stories. In fact, that's what this is kind of best for. And escape rooms, similarly, even to this day, the vast majority of people making rooms are making kind of rooms that are derivative of what they've seen in the first and second generation of escape rooms. And they haven't yet realized, like, no, this is a fully new storytelling medium that kind of brings together the best of video games and experiential theater. And it's really exciting to be kind of at the forefront of that revelation.
And so what you're trying to do with your lab rat is to actually tell a full story. Like there's like a real narrative, because I've done so many escape rooms that are like, you could say there's a narrative in the sense that like a bomb doesn't go off, or, you can escape out of this jail cell, but there really isn't much of a story.
Yeah, there's a lot of even some of the best rooms are just a setup. Like you're a criminal who didn't do the thing you're accused of, and you need to get out of the cell in the next hour before the warden comes back and clear your name. And there are people who genuinely believe that's a story. And there's a really great parallel here to video games. But I play a lot of video games. I've played sort of, I think, everything that matters in video games, for the past 25 years. And video games had a similar trajectory, right? Which is that first there was Pong, no story at all,
right?
Or Pitfall, depending on how far back you want to go. And then for a solid 15, 20 years, there was this basically like, I don't know, pseudo narrative or para narrative. So like, yeah, there was a story, right? There's a story in not Super Mario Brothers, but there's a story in The Legend of Zelda, which is that like the princess is, bad things have happened to the princess. You got to save her and wake her up and whatever.
Yeah. Well, all those RPGs had stories like Space Quest and King's Quest and, those 90s sort of.
Yeah, those adventure games.
Yeah.
Well, the adventure games are kind of, in many ways, closest to what escape rooms are doing, because they're light puzzling, light story, that kind of thing. So, yeah, we talk about those games quite a lot. The old Sierra games and LucasArts in particular made some really phenomenal games that we're indebted to. But they weren't, most of these games were not telling particularly good stories. And actually, I do think there are some exceptions, particularly in that adventure game space, where they were really trying. Everything from like the Phantasmagoria to the Maniac Mansion games, the Monkey Island games. There's some decent storytelling in there. But the vast, vast majority of games for 15, 20 years were not telling real stories that are character-based, that are based on the intention of a protagonist, the obstacles and thrown in the face of that protagonist, and the eventual growth of the protagonist, which is what we sort of consider, basic narrative in film, television, books. Video games weren't doing that. And a big reason for that was that the people writing video games were the programmers. It was literally the same guy who was programming all the stuff. He was writing it. And that's a mistake, I think, that comes out of just sheer hubris, that these were very, very smart, primarily men for many years, very, very smart men who thought, because I'm smart, I can do anything. And writing, that's easy. I read and write and talk all the time, so I should be able to write this just fine. And what you ended up with was incredibly simplistic, generally incredibly sexist, boring stories for a really long time. And it's taken until, I would argue, being generous 10 years ago, for video game companies to even start attempting to tell real emotional, political, forward-thinking narrative. That's new.
And so where in that trajectory are escape rooms right now? What percentage of them are attempting to kind of do what you're doing?
I would say basically none. Europe is a little bit ahead. So all of this moved west. So from Eastern Europe to Europe. So many of the best rooms in the world are in Germany and the Netherlands. I haven't actually played them, but my co-founder recently went on a world tour and played all of the top 10. There's actually an international ranking system that's fairly robust. The statistical analysis is kind of mind-boggling. They explain the methodology on their website. It's called the Top Escape Rooms Project. But they've done an international ranking. Our room is ranked number 8. And many of the rooms above us are in Germany and the Netherlands. Now, even amongst those incredible rooms that are farther along than we are, they're not always prioritizing narrative. Sometimes they're prioritizing incredible technology, or an incredible scale in terms of how big the space is, or whether you move around the city or travel to different places. So there are different things to prioritize, and there's no right answer. But I will say, in terms of the video game analogy, we're probably, we're 10 years ago. Like, some people now are starting to realize, what can be done with this medium. And some people are not wanting to prioritize that just yet.
I was just in a room that had two of the same clue, and it was clearly a mistake. And we spent like a lot of time wasted on trying to figure out what to do with this second clue until I was like, wait a minute, we should just throw this away. It clearly doesn't belong here. And then some rooms will have like too many red herrings that it's just like not fun. It's like, yeah, it's easy to like put something that makes it look like it's a clue and it's not a clue. You know, some of those just seem like time wasters to me.
Yeah, my Terry, my co-founder, he recently, after doing his world tour, he posted on this enthusiasts Facebook group that we're a part of. He posted the 10 commandments of escape rooms and created something of a anger kerfuffle from a lot of owners who broke his commandments,
right?
And were angry at him for sort of calling them out on it. But yeah, some of these, for those of us that care about the medium, some of these are no-brainers now. And you know, listen, the medium is developing. You know, with video games, you know, it used to be that the way you made a video game long, like you made it an experience that was worth the money, was you just made it needlessly, brutally hard. And that's like the entire generation of Nintendo, like all Nintendo games, the original Nintendo. That's how they did it. Those games are just brutally difficult. And it's one of the reasons why video games was so niche back then, is that you had to want to punish yourself. Video games have now completely overturned that, so much so that we're finally seeing a resurgence of difficult games, specifically from this company called From Software does it. But
that's one of my complaints about video games lately, is that I don't feel like I actually am in control of anything. You know?
Right. Well, they're looking now to tell better stories, and the scale is what keeps you entertained. So you're entertained because there's 70 hours of content. None of it is necessarily difficult, depending on who you are and how you want to play. But yes, I agree with you. There's so many errors that are made in the vast majority of rooms. Really simple, basic, the equivalent of grammatical errors in writing, in terms of red herrings and things like that just get made again and again and again.
So one of my theories about why people love immersive theater and things like escape rooms is because they kind of long for the ability to kind of connect and collaborate on something fun. Is that something that you guys kind of talk about in the escape world?
Oh, very much so. I mean, our hope and firm belief in our case, that this is not a fad like Tamagotchis or something. That this is a movement culturally away from the digital space, and there's a lot of data to support that. The fact is that you know, the sort of wealthier classes for a while now have been desperate to get their children and their lives out of the digital space. You know, these are the people who can afford immersive theater experiences, and it's part of that same movement. Is like,
and
I don't want my
escape rooms are not cheap.
Yeah, they're not. We're probably the most expensive in LA. In fact, at $39 a person.
Right.
And we do get pushback on that. And our next room will probably be even more. You know, we come from a New York theater background a little bit, where, you know, Sleep No More is probably $120.
Right.
And then you
and
also
there were
spend
zero
money
games. There were 0 games in Sleep No More.
The line, I think, between escape rooms and experiential theater is going to be blurred more and more, and we're actually even in talks about how to blur those lines more and more.
Yeah, and I've seen in New York, I did a film noir escape room that had several actors and felt more like a theater piece. And then you and I did, I guess it wasn't really an escape room, right? The one we were trapped in the mall with the zombies.
Right. I mean, it maybe it was. You'd have to go 6 times to know for sure. That was the problem with the design there.
Right. Yeah, that was a strange one. Are there any escape rooms in New York or LA that you would recommend outside of Lab Rat?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot that are great. I will say that I'm a bit of a curmudgeon, and I think this inevitably happens to anyone who stays in the industry for long enough, which is that I don't enjoy them very much anymore. With rare exceptions of kind of the best of the best. Even some of the ones here in LA that people rave about, and rightly so, I've had less than stellar experiences just for my own enjoyment.
Right.
You know, there's a room here called The Laboratory that I love because it's just puzzles and it doesn't even try to do anything else. And in some ways, I kind of respect that more than the truly half-assed narrative that so many people bring to the table. This one is pure puzzling from start to finish. And if you like puzzles, that purity and the clarity of the flow of the puzzles is really impressive and enjoyable. So I would actually really recommend The Laboratory. There's a bunch of rooms in San Francisco that I think are the best that I've played.
What are they?
So it's a company called Palace Games because they're located in the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. And speaking of expensive, their rooms are very interesting. Booking their rooms is $400 no matter how many people you bring. So if you bring 2, it's the most expensive thing you'll do that month. Right. If you bring 10, it actually starts to be, it's the same as us. But a really interesting pricing strategy on their part. I respect it. They have 3 rooms right now. Their 4th, I think, is close to finished. And all of them are amazing and interesting. So they have a Roosevelt room about Roosevelt.
Teddy or Franklin?
Franklin. And wait, I think it's Franklin. I might be too stupid about history to know.
We talk about the Roosevelts on this show quite a bit. So Kieran's he's going to flip when he hears there's a Roosevelt-related escape room.
Yeah, you're going to kill me if it's wrong, though. We
were just joking that, we should open an escape room in Boston where it's just a guy who's dresses like John Adams and you just have to sit next to him for an hour. Can anyone stand to sit next to John Adams for an hour?
I'd play that. I'd play that. It's Teddy. Of course it's Teddy. No, of course it's Teddy.
Teddy's more fun.
Yeah, Teddy's way more fun. And I don't want to spoil what happens in that room, but it doesn't have a narrative. But what it does have is it still has the equivalent of a 3-act structure in terms of the presentation of the room. It's not a narrative, but the 3rd act is quite a showstopper. It's really impressive what they do there.
You're making me want to fly out to San Francisco and check out this room. Maybe when I'm in the...
you should. Yeah. Well, all 3 of theirs. They also have a Thomas Edison room, which is the best execution of high technology that I've seen. And we've spent a lot of time with the owner over there and looked sort of under the hood of how they're doing everything they're doing. And it really, really is impressive. He comes out of tech. It comes out of the San Francisco tech scene, that whole company. And it shows. Like, they really know what they're doing and do some really impressive stuff.
I feel like I've seen Sherlock Holmes everywhere. I've seen KGB spy everywhere. And these must be the ones that you could have just buy out of a truck.
Well, KGB is very often out of Russia for obvious reasons. Sherlock is more interesting. There's a room in London right now that is an actual production of the TV show Sherlock, the Benedict Cumberbatch one, which I hear, I don't want to talk out of school, I hear is not phenomenal, but the production values are amazing because they had access to the actual actors from that show. And I should say that what a lot of escape rooms do, including our room, is we have pre-recorded actors. So we do want characters that are actual people you can see, but it's better if you pre-record them, I think.
Do you have you seen rooms that incorporate like VR or AR?
Yes, and I hate it. I always hate it. VR is particularly terrible because for a whole bunch of reasons. So when we were starting the company, a lot of people said, are you going to do VR? VR, it's the next big thing. And we get calls from VR companies all the time.
Sure.
The problem is, and I don't mean to be rude about the people who have put VR in their rooms because I've seen it, but anyone who was paying attention to the technology was going to tell you right away that there was very little interesting you could do with VR because so quickly it was going to move to a consumer model where you would just have it at home. So there's no need to go out and do VR. I still think that's the case. The one exception is kind of what some companies are doing, like the Void. Do you know the Void?
No, what's the Void?
So the Void is a company.
I know the Void inside, but I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. No, not your personal Void, your ethical, moral vacuum. No, the Void is a company. I believe Disney has now fully acquired them because they're on the Disney lot, so to speak. They're at the park here in LA.
It seems like escape rooms would be all over these parks.
Yeah, well, not yet. Primarily because of throughput issues. It's really hard to put a lot of people through rooms. You have to come up with some really smart designs. And some people have great ones. There's a place called Bodeborg on the East Coast, which does something really, really smart for throughput. I won't get into it, but there's a lot of ways to handle it. But the Void also has low throughput, I should say, but they charge a hilarious amount of money. They charge like $50 and it's like a 4-minute experience or something. It's crazy. Wow. But it is the future of VR, I think, which is you strap the whole rig on your back. It's really heavy. And they have built a physical space that you move around in. So you're not just standing there and you're not just pacing a hallway. They've built a whole space. And the technology is complex enough that you go in with your friends and the camera renders your friends as characters within the narrative. So when you look at your friends, you see them and they can wave
Right.
at you and everything else, but they look like stormtroopers because right now it's a Star Wars one. And I think of, and they can do some incredible things with geometry because we're actually very bad at working out spatially what the hell's going on around us. So what they can do is they can kind of have you, like run down a hall, get on a spaceship. The spaceship takes off, lands on the moon. You get off it. You have a firefight with some aliens across a bridge. And all of that is taking place in like 100 square feet. But you can't tell. It feels like you're covering vast distances. And I think when the technology gets there where you can have an experience like that lasts for 90 minutes, we're going to have something really, really serious on our hands.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, the only VR experience that I've been to in New York recently was a VR World, and it's this VR arcade,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the saddest place I've ever been. It's just like a bunch of people standing around, jumping around. They all look miserable. The equipment's dirty. It barely works. It falls off your head, or it's not built. I mean, it's like a total disaster. And it's like $40 an hour to hang out in this really sad place. But you know what's funny? You'll appreciate this. I was in Mexico City recently, and I saw a production of Jesus Christ Superstar. And you know the scene where Jesus goes into the temple and gets really angry and throws everybody out?
Of course.
That temple everybody was just wearing VR headsets, and they projected the VR orgy that was happening in the headsets. And so Jesus comes in, starts screaming, and starts ripping off people's VR headsets. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
That is amazing. This stuff in person is really sad, and it's actually one of the biggest hurdles right now that VR is facing, even on the consumer level. Right. Is that you put that helmet on and you're dead to the world.
Well, say let's kind of circle back to escape rooms here. Say our listeners have never been to an escape room. What are some of the things they should look for? How many people should they bring? What's a good sort of first escape room experience?
Sure. Well, I mean, read reviews. The biggest problem with escape rooms is, and I should say read expert reviews, not Yelp reviews. Yelp is useless on every level. It should cease to be a company, but that's neither here nor there.
We're going to link to this top escape room projects in the show notes.
Yeah. A lot of people are still so new to escape rooms that when they talk about them, they're talking about all of them monolithically. So in other words, people will say like, I don't like escape rooms, and they don't realize that they're basically saying like, I don't like movies.
Yeah.
And so you want to do enough research to know, and that's difficult. That's very difficult. Usually rooms are somewhere from 4 to 8 people. Our room maxes out at 12, but only because people demanded it. We don't actually think it's very good above 8, but people just wanted to come with larger groups, so we let them. Always try to find a room that is private. A lot of places still do public rooms, which means they want to fill up the cap so they can make as much money as possible. Right. So they group you with other people.
And
I hate to say
fun.
it. Yeah. We have some friends who still do it. They're companies. I think it's a terrible, terrible idea. It's a greedy idea. It's a way to make money. And you can really get paired with some nasty or just boring people, or people who play escape rooms tend to be passionate and wildly enthusiastic, and it means they want to solve the puzzles, and they will step on your child to do it. Yeah. So look for a private room if you can, and look for what's newest. I hate to be that guy, but the medium is developing so quickly that inevitably, if a company has 4 rooms, their 4th room is almost always their best room. Right. With some exceptions, but overall, it's a safe bet that if it was built in the last year, it's better than if it was built 4 years ago.
I can usually tell which room is the best room by the fact I can't book it because it's full.
Yes. The newest rooms tend to.
I'm always like, there was this one I wanted to try recently, and instead I went with the room that was available, which was totally fine, but it was like zombie related. So what are you going to do? But there was this Aztec one that looked really fun, but it was booked for like 6 days.
Yeah, no, they book out. We still our weekends are still always booked, and a lot of our weekdays. Part of what we're trying to do with our second room, which is in development now, it's our attempt to break replayability, because kind of the golden egg for escape rooms is how can we get people to ever want to come back? And the answer is it's almost impossible, right? Because it's a puzzle-based medium. And once you know how to solve the puzzles, why would you ever come back? And we've come up with some, I think, extremely creative solutions to that. Namely, it's sort of hard to explain, but the puzzles are more like activities that are kind of infinite. Like if you imagine that there are 300 of them, and you're trying to get through as many as you can in a strict time limit. If you come back, you won't see the same ones that you saw the last time. And then at the same time, our game has a whole bunch of different endings and an entire secret room that you effectively can't access the first time you play. So we're hoping that all of that sort of taken together with all the different ways the story can end based on decisions you make during the game, that's going to be enough to bring back the enthusiasts over the years.
And what about the concept of asking for a tip?
Yeah, so hints. There's a lot of great ways to do hints. One of Terry, my co-founder's 10 commandments was, don't give me a walkie-talkie. So a lot of what we call first generation and second generation rooms, they give you a walkie-talkie when you walk in, and like you could be in 17th century, London, and they're handing you. It's ridiculous. And it's also bad tech. Like walkie-talkies are bad tech. They static out.
We couldn't find the button that we were supposed to hit. It was so dark, and there was like 6 buttons. So we ended up just leaving the walkie-talkie because it was too annoying to carry.
Yeah, exactly right. And that happens a lot. It's bad technology. But there's so many great ways to do hints. A lot of rooms do like a cell phone that they kind of have on a private band, and if you text it, you text to the person on the text. That works fine. I don't love it, but it works fine.
If you did an Alexander Graham Bell room, there'd be a lot of opportunities to work.
There you go. Well, that's the thing, right? This all comes back to this word that gets thrown around in theater a lot, which is diegetic, which means, diegetic music in a musical means are the people singing within the narrative of the thing.
Why are they singing hip hop and it's the Revolutionary War,
Right. So that's non-diegetic music in Hamilton, whereas something like Sing Street is diegetic, or Once, the Once musical is diegetic. And in escape rooms, the goal is to make everything as diegetic as possible. There are limits. There are severe limits. You can't go all the way, or else it would be dangerous, actually. But in our room, it's very easy. Well, I wouldn't say it's easy. We came up with an elegant solution, which is you are in a laboratory being run by giant rats who are doing experiments about human intelligence. So you're basically like a rat, a lab rat in a world run by rats. You're a lab human. And the guy doing the experiments, the giant rat, Dr. Ratkenstein, he is there. He is physically in the space, kind of looking over your cardboard maze. And all of the hints, when you ask for a hint, are pre-recorded. So we basically recorded every possible thing that a person could conceivably have a problem with. And there's a cue that we can do for that. Now, that being said, one thing we learned in doing this room is it is impossible to predict everything, because they're like people over time, people will just do the most ridiculous things. And in that case, our game master just has to get on the microphone and say, take your penis out of that. It's not going to help,
That's not the solution.
That is not the solution.
Look, Tommy, I apologized. Okay.
Seemed
obvious.
You're never coming back. No, but one of the things we faced, which is one of my new favorite brain teasers, is how do you ever keep people out of a hole? Right. And the answer is, and I'm really not joking about this, there is no way. There is nothing you can write on a hole that will convince people that it isn't a trick and they should still look inside the hole. There's nothing you could put there. You could say, my name is Tommy Wallach. I am the creator of Lab Rat. I am the owner. And if you put anything in this hole, your whole family will die. It won't matter. They'll be like, that's so funny. This must be a trick. Let's grab the hole. So you just have to be ready. And we have cues for that, but we don't have cues for some of the more creative things people do. But there are lots of ways to do it. One of my favorites recently was in Evil Genius. They had an actor who did the hints. His name was Mr. Giggles, and he was terrifying. It was a she, but it looks like a he. It was this sort of monster that was truly terrifying, but also weirdly cute, maybe because of the name Mr. Giggles. And whenever you struggled, Mr. Giggles would kind of come scuttering in and give you a hint. And it's awesome. Really worked.
I love that. So they should loan this Mr. Giggles out.
Yes, we love Mr. Giggles.
Well, look, Tommy, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a good idea about escape rooms. And what's your website so folks can go check out your rooms?
Yeah, we're called Hatch Escapes. So that's hatchescapes.com, one word, like an egg hatching. That's us.
Awesome. Well, guys, I think it's time for the last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
Wasn't that interesting, Kieran? And doesn't that make you want to like go out and try an escape room today?
Yeah, Ryan, I really loved that insight that the escape rooms actually started in video games and then became real world. I mean, that's exactly the sort of immersive experience that you get off on.
Look, I mean, who would have thought that when we were playing Myst as kids, that one day we would be living inside of Myst, solving these real weird puzzles with all of our friends. So very cool.
I'm more of a Zelda guy, so I don't really get that reference. But you have to escape things in Zelda too.
We give Zelda plenty of credit, and Tommy thinks Zelda is one of the early role-playing games that really experimented with serious narrative. So
completely agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much to Tommy Wallach. But listen, we're here in the last stop, so we can't continue talking about escape rooms.
No.
But though, top 10 escape rooms in the United States, not a bad idea.
There is a top 10 international escape rooms list put out every year that is incredibly statistically significant that we're going to link to in the show notes.
Fantastic. Well, Ryan, we are here in the last stop. This is my favorite segment, your favorite segment, popularly known as the People segment. It's a moment where we take a moment to breathe, to calm down. We've done all the topic. Now we're going to come, and you and I are each going to share. We're going to open ourselves. We're going to share one thing that we did that week. Maybe we cooked. Maybe we read. Maybe we saw something. Maybe we did a local tourism spot. We might have cooked. Oh, I already said cooked. So
I definitely didn't cook.
We might have cooked twice. Something that fed the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. Because, you can't always be traveling. So, Ryan, I want to know, what is your last stop this week?
I am so excited. It is Tuesday morning, and I just have a few days to wait until Bushwick Open Studios. From September the 20th to the 22nd, Friday through Sunday, all the artists in Bushwick, Brooklyn, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of artists open up their studios to let people come in and see what they've been working on throughout the year.
So they just like throw open the doors?
It's pretty much just like that. You can be in one studio that's literally clear that somebody lives there and they have 6 paintings and you're a little bit frightened. And then you can be in like an extraordinary gallery that is representing several artists and where everything is $10,000. So it is a great place to, I live in Bushwick. I walk around Bushwick a lot. And often there are just a bunch of buildings you can't go in because they're not for us. But on Bushwick Open Studio weekend, they're not for us.
What, like Irish need not apply?
Well, you don't have a studio in here. But on Bushwick Open Studio weekend, you can actually so many of the buildings that you can't walk into have a sign that says "Come on in." They've got people serving drinks and snacks, and you can really spend. It is impossible to see every studio. Usually I max out about 100 a year.
Wow.
But it is a really, really fun way to spend the day in Bushwick and to see a bunch of crazy art and see what's going on in the neighborhood.
And presumably you can also buy the art while you visit.
Oh, they would love it if you bought the art.
I bet they would. And are some also like creating art while you're there?
Yeah. There are some people who are working on something. There are some of the tips that I think if you're a first time Bushwick Open Studios attendee, I've been going for about a decade. But if this is your first time you're attending, try to go to when you pick up the map, try to go to one of these studios that has like 20 or 30 studios in it, so it's easy to navigate and hit a bunch of it. Because there are some that are really out of the way, but I think for somebody who's just starting out, pick one of these big buildings and have at it.
Very cool. And we will link to where you can kind of plot out your day, artsinbushwick.org, in the show notes.
Yeah, amazing organization. And this is the 13th year of
Ooh,
Bushwick Open
spooky.
Studios. I know.
Spooky year.
Spooky 13. Do you have a last stop this week, Kieran?
I mean, in a way, I do have a last stop, but it's kind of your second last stop because you sent this article to me and I liked it so much, I'm just stealing it for my last stop.
I believe I texted you and said, this is going to be my next last stop.
Yeah, but then
the article.
But then you had this fantastic Bushwick Open Studios anticipation, so I'm taking it for myself.
Look, a lot of people know that I'm the guy who does the research, so no problem.
Right. I think people all understand he's making a joke. So this is an article in the Washington Post by Natalie Compton where she came up. This was such a brilliant idea. I'm actually really sad we've never thought to do this on the show. The article is entitled "Best One-Star Reviews of the Seven Wonders of the World." And what she did was she took, we all know the seven wonders of the world
Sure.
that, you can go out and you can visit today. And, so Machu Picchu is in there and the Taj Mahal. And she went on to online reviews and found people that gave these one-star reviews and gave a bit of analysis as to what these people, what was the bug in their bonnet
Right.
exactly. So I thought maybe I could just share one or two on the pod and then folks can go and have a field day with the rest of them.
I am so excited to hear these.
So, the pyramids at Chichen Itza in Mexico?
Sure.
Absolutely gorgeous and
Yeah.
iconic.
I think those are 4 stars pyramids.
So, this one was written by a user named Undead Beauty. And Undead Beauty said the following: not worth it. the tour, really on the nose. Not worth it. The tour guide on the bus was rude to me and not funny. In fact, he made the bus ride longer with his monotoned, unfunny dialogue. The radio thing they gave us to listen to the guide on the tour stopped working halfway. They were supposed to offer us soda or beer on the ride back, but they didn't offer beer at all. Vendors kept shoving things in my face and following me to try to sell me things to the point of harassment, and the overall experience was awful. It was not worth the money. People said it's because it's a poor country, but so is Jamaica, and Jamaica was nothing like this. Jamaica was wonderful. Mexico was terrible. Oh my God.
So she is grading an entire country on
Well, we don't know the
tour-
gender of Undead Beauty.
I'm sorry.
I'm assuming it's a they, them.
They are grading an entire country 1 star because of an experience on a tour bus. It's not even. They're not even reviewing the pyramids. That
No,
was like an
no.
afterthought.
There's
She
really
was
no
s-
mention of actually seeing the
No,
pyramid
they
itself.
were way more concerned with the soda situation. You know,
Really, the beer
Yeah.
situation was
Yeah.
the main cause there. But also,
you're never too far away from a cerveza. You
Yeah.
know, I just don't believe it.
But also, the idea, first of all, we're all very impressed that you know the word for beer in Spanish, Ryan, and you pronounced it beautifully. Again,
Gracias.
it seems like carne asada and cerveza are like the keys to your language skills in Spanish.
It is pretty true. Yeah.
And also, this horrible person writes off the entire country of Mexico as terrible based on this rude tour guide.
Yeah, this one single tour guide who I'm sure was probably normal. This person just
I
requires
think-
like a lot of attention.
Safe to assume, yeah.
Well, that's a good one. What other 1-star reviews?
All
you
right,
got?
just the only other one I'll give you here, and then we'll link in the show notes to the others because it's worth reading through all of them. Is a review for the Colosseum in Italy. You know the Colosseum.
Oh, that's a 3-star.
Huge, famous.
I've seen
at
better.
least 3 stars.
I've seen better.
Famous, huge Roman amphitheater, and this user named Jahorn said, "Creepy place. Don't like to see the persecution of Christians. Creepy place. The pain and suffering here was beyond imagination." I mean that's like. So the person is condemning it for the fact that it was once used for Christians to fight each other in lions.
Yeah, so they're actually reviewing the scale of the tragedy. That would be like going to Auschwitz and being like 1 star. You know
Oh, jeez.
what? I mean, Auschwitz was a terrible, terrible thing. So it's 1 star, right?
Actually, I'd be kind of creeped out if somebody gave Auschwitz 5 stars for what it's worth.
I don't know what maybe Auschwitz shouldn't be on Yelp.
Yeah,
you know,
I
they're-
I think we can both agree that maybe the rating system doesn't apply to
It's appropriate to rate your local Domino's on Yelp. It's not appropriate to rate Auschwitz or
But I also feel like Jahorn must not be Catholic, because if you go into a Catholic church, they love the persecution of Christians. You got, Jesus is hanging off crosses. You got saints with their eyes getting gouged out. Usually they're being crucified upside down. I mean, we love the persecution of Christians.
Yeah, but
it's what makes us what we are.
as folks who have survived the war on Christmas, you get less and less. When you see that kind of persecution, it just reminds you of what we have to deal with here.
So, Ryan, folks should absolutely check it out. It covers Machu Picchu, Great Wall of China, Petra and Jordan, the Taj Mahal. you should go and read all the reasons that you shouldn't check out these spectacular places because somebody was rude to you, or you got some soda on your shoe. And frankly, I would recommend, it's worth thinking of some of the best places that you've ever visited. Go to TripAdvisor and look at 1-star ratings for them. And to your point, Ryan, you were saying you think some of these must be trolls. I don't know. There's a lot more kind of narrative quality to these miserable experiences that folks had than I would think a troll would put into it.
Well, that's fair enough. But it does strike me that folks don't review like that you stepped on a piece of gum when you're on the way to one of the world's great historical places. It's not that's not old Prague's fault. What are we talking about next time, Kieran?
So next time, we're going to have my conversation with an artist named James Van Nuys. And James Van Nuys works in South Dakota. And there's a city called Rapid City, South Dakota, that's it's sort of like the entryway into Mount Rushmore. And what they've done is they have set aside an area of their downtown that they call the City of Presidents. And on each corner, on 44 different corners, they have one statue of each president from Washington to Obama. They only put it in once you've left office. And James Van Nuys is the artist that was selected for the sculpture of Barack Obama. And so we're going to talk to him about, the history and lore of the City of Presidents, what it's like to capture the essence of Barack Obama, and we're going to get some fun and interesting presidential facts. So it'll definitely be up our alley, Ryan.
The fact that I didn't know, well, I knew that Rapid City existed, but that this presidential portion of it didn't exist, I am super excited to hear this interview.
Absolutely.
Well, until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kieran Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This week taken. Ryan, if you had to write an escape room, well, what would be the theme of it?
I would have it be escape from your monotonous life.
I think you live in that room every day.
It's a hard one. It's a hard one. You get way more than 60 minutes to beat it.
Oh, jeez. Get all the sharp objects out of Ryan's room.